the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar. Ching, ching, bling, bling, cut the chatter. You ain't talking money, then your talking don't matter. Ching, ching, bling, bling, patent pockets. We take the dollar, dollar, can a damn soul stop it. Here comes the new kid on the block. Hold on, you bet, kids, where's the buck stop? See, first of all, I'm stepping out on my own. About time I elevated to claim my own throne. Success in my blood, call it homegrown. Towards reaching testosterone. Power and money got me crazy cocky. No longer need you, Poppy. I know you're mad because you can't stop me. And if you wonder how this player done scooped your honey, I think she smell my cologne, it's called brand new money. Making major moves, man, ain't a damn thing funny. Pimpin' hood rats to Playboy bunnies. They see the... They see it, they see it.
All right, and that music is special for tonight's movie review. This is the Radulich and Broadcasting Movie Review Club, and I am your host for tonight. Robert Winfrey has the night off. I am your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And Robert Winfrey is taking the night off because we are reviewing the NWA biopic Straight Outta Compton. And to help me do that, here is Dr. Ben Carson's #1 fan from Straight Out of the Casual Heroes. Here he is, Mr. Excitement himself, Jed. How you doing, Jed?
Hey, how are you?
Good. So, right off the bat, let me ask you, we talked about this a few months ago about doing this review together. What have you been listening to NWA for a long time? Are you an especially big fan of theirs? What makes you so excited about this?
My cousin's friend, when I was a kid, had a bootleg tape of NWA, and he ended up getting the real thing and gave me the bootleg tape. So ever since I was a kid, I was way too young of a kid, I've been a gigantic NWA fan. I mean, God, we're going on since I was 9, since I was 10. You know, and since, it's been kind of difficult at times lately, you follow the careers of Dre and, I mean, to, Cube, who's become terrible, and, Ren, who's been thoroughly obscured, but it's just kind of what you did, you follow what were the best guys in music, and you watch them become, parodies of themselves, and then... you still kind of enjoy it just because it's like you look, it's like when Hogan comes out, and you see him, you're like, ugh, when he comes walking out, but really you're just kind of happy to see him and feel how you used to feel about him.
Yeah, there's a certain nostalgia button that he presses, and these guys too. For those that don't know, and I'll only bring it up briefly, this is the second attempt at this review tonight. The first attempt, there were too many technical difficulties, and I had to throw it in the trash. But I had this whole opening monologue about how I've been listening to this kind of music since really it started to come out. No, I'm not the original Green Day fan or anything like that. I don't like to put myself off as I was listening to it before anybody else was. But I grew up in a suburb of New York City, and I was surrounded by rap music. I was telling my wife when we saw this that, in 86, 87, 88, I was listening to Ice-T's Rhyme Pays and Power, and I had Too Short, Like This. I had the DOC's No One Can Do It. I had everything except for Straight Outta Compton, oddly enough. I remember I had a Sir Mix-a-Lot album, but well before fucking Baby Got Back. So I grew up with this kind of music, and then on the other side, I was listening to Public Enemy and KRS-One. So for me, it's funny, you sort of talking about nostalgia. I'm watching this movie, and by far the biggest star of this movie is the music itself. And for me, it was a sort of a trip down memory lane, because I remember as these songs were coming out and all the controversy and everything, I was 10, in 1986. So I was cognizant of what was going on and what the music was. And since my parents were, in terms of what I was allowed to be exposed to, were pretty liberal. I was allowed to watch rated R movies, and I was allowed to listen to Dirty Filthy, rap music, as long as my father didn't hear it. So I listened to it all. And it was fun to hear it all over again throughout the course of this movie. I think by far it was the most entertaining part of it. I think I want to tackle this review sort of in two pieces. One, looking at the good points of it, the craft, the acting, and all of that. But I also want to spend some time a little bit later talking about some of the inaccuracies, things left out. I know one of your comments about it offline was that it was a very entertaining movie and thoroughly inaccurate. So I kind of want to get your take on that. But first, overall, if you could speak to it, what did you think of the movie in general?
Like as far as like music biopics go, I mean, it's no. To me, the king will always be La Bamba, but this was. I mean, this was as good, if not better, than the stupid Johnny Cash movie or the Ray, Ray and stuff like that. It just seemed to do those things without the cheesiness and the hokiness, but maybe that's just because it involved black people and not, white people's interpretation of black people. So,
yeah, one sec. This movie was produced by Eazy-E's widow, Tamika, Dr. Dre, and Ice Cube.
Yeah,
so I felt like any real failures of the movie, these three people were helming this thing. Excuse me. They were helming this thing. So you figure, it's the final product really should be what they wanted people to see.
Well, it was. I mean, we can get into the inaccuracies about that stuff later, but yeah, it didn't take long to figure out who was behind this movie.
Yeah, MC Ren and DJ Yellow were also there. It was kind of, and I walked away from like, this is the story of Eazy-E, Ice Cube, and Dr. Dre. MC Ren and DJ Yellow was just there. Though the guy who plays DJ I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, he was funny throughout the whole thing, and then they had Ray Voodoo Tatum from Friday Night Lights play Ren, and took a pretty decent actor and gave him absolutely nothing to do. Literally the entire movie, other than when he told Heller, and he told Heller the manager, not the rapper there, not the DJ, but told Heller and Eazy, like, we got to do something about this, and then that was it. That was his contribution to the entire movie, it seemed.
Yeah, his reaction to No Vaseline is the high point of his performance in that movie. Let me run real quick through the plot of this thing. And as far as the movie is concerned, we meet Eazy in the midst of a dope deal going terribly wrong. My wife's sort of lily white reaction to the house being stormed into by the police was one of shock. She was just like, oh my God, police have battering rams? Yes, they do. And yes, they took Brown face off.
They did, and then they were taken away, and then they were given immediately right back to them.
Yeah, they still have paramilitary vehicles in the police force throughout the nation. That's a whole other podcast. But yeah, that whole the look inside of a drug den and all of those things going wrong, and then the involvement of the police. This was a woman who had a hard time with the Dark Knight movie. So she's watching this and she's like, Jesus Christ, is that real? And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately that was actually whitewashed. It's actually way worse.
I had a hard time with the Dark Knight movie too.
Because you hated it, I'm sure.
Yeah, but that's not the hard time she had.
No, sir. All right, so we meet Eazy in the midst of a drug deal going bad. We're introduced to Ice Cube as he's still going to school and writing rhymes. We're introduced to Dr. Dre, who is trying to make a living as a DJ and wanting to become a music producer.
Right off the bat, how about Dr. Dre's mom giving him a hard time for making $50 cash for one night's work? Like, I'm not here to act like that's a ton of money, but for $50 cash for one night's work, it's pretty good for starting out. And I didn't understand.
she's giving him a hard time like he's just a shiftless layabout. You know, it was very hard to feel sympathetic for her.
Well,
Especially,
here's the thing. She starts off the movie by telling her son to give up the dream.
right.
In a biopic about one of the most successful human beings of the last 100 years.
Right, yeah. I wonder how many times she's seen the headline for Apple buys Beats by Dre for like $1 billion, largest purchase in America. He's now, I think, the richest entertainer in the world. How many times she goes back to that home and go, I'm an ass.
Yeah, and she goes back to the mansion that her son bought her. And then the son that ended up living the life that she wanted him to, dead.
Right. There is a cottage industry now of articles being written about this movie where women are made to just look terrible. You know, it's article after article I'm seeing. There's, I think, a video out there, you know, straight out of Compton, the women that Dr. Dre beat over the years. It's like, Jesus Christ.
See, that's the
one of the
thing.
critics of the movie. Women look terrible in this.
I know, but they made such a little deal of that, and when Ice Cube said that shit about Heller and he said kike, like they didn't even touch on it, and it was just like, dude, you guys. Well, they did. They took a second for somebody to ask Cube, like, hey, why did you say this anti-Jew stuff? And Cube turns it into like a fuck you like moment, and like, you know, I'm sure, and the audience I saw it with were like, yeah, fuck you. And I was like, oh, that's not the point. That's not how this happened. He is I wanted to be like, guys, I assure you, everyone, Ice Cube is a cunt. You know, but it was lost on him.
Yeah. Since we're skipping around, I'll tell you my reaction to that scene. You know, they're sitting there, they're listening to No Vaseline, and Jerry Heller is kind of like, you know, I don't know about any of this. And then he gets to you getting fucked by a Jew or kike or whatever it was he said. You know, and that's when he turns it off and he starts getting, you know, and then he goes into this rant about how he's going to get the ADL on them and everything. And their reaction to him is, it's a battle rap, would you please relax? And I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, this is typical. You know, like, white people, regardless of whether or not they're Jewish or not, white people, you're okay as long as you're making us money, but don't think we're in any way sympathetic towards you. You're getting a hard time. Fuck off.
That's how this is, you know, and that... I don't mean to be like kind of like whatever about this, but there were a lot of white people behind NWA, you know, and it wasn't just Heller, and there was a lot of people who supported these guys, and like it was just kind of funny that they just made it seem, you know, given everything going on in today's society, how they just made the white guy just seem like this horrible person who just wanted to use them. Where the truth about that is, you know, do you know the truth about that?
No, and I do want to hear it. So you know what? Let's just freeform this. Go ahead. Talk a little bit about how they basically. I mean, they made him a sympathetic villain, but a villain nonetheless. So what's the real deal?
Well, here's the thing. At the end of the movie, Heller tells Easy, no, don't handle it with violence. So it's like, okay, you know, tells Easy, you know, no, not with violence. You're so much smarter than that. We're not going to read him with. And then this is the guy that you spent the first 2 hours of the movie vilifying. And it's like, where was the message with that? It should have just seemed like Easy should have just gone and killed fucking Ice Cube, and things would have been fine. But Easy, you know, I don't want to be disparaging of Easy because he's my favorite guy from the group, but he was the one who dog-fucked Cube and Dre. Like, he was the bad guy in the actual story. Heller just drew up the shit that, you know, allowed him to be it. And, I mean, in all honesty, Easy put up all the money at first and stuff like that, supposedly. But this is part of the inaccuracies that, you know, part one. Well, one of one is, hey, Dr. Dre beat up a lot of women on the way. And two is, Easy was not a good guy. And I'm not trying to... I mean, believe me, when it came time between Easy and Dre, I picked Easy. You know, and I think time will tell that I was right on that, even though it's over and I was wrong. But that's not the point. I think Easy was the ultimate warrior, and Dre was Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
I keep bringing up wrestling. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah. It's fine. Anyone that listens to this knows Robert Winfrey and I make wrestling analogies all the time. So what we're talking about here is one of the major plot lines of this movie is that you have this group that comes together, and part of the drive is that they want to get out of the situation that they're all in, which is sort of violence and poverty-stricken Compton, Los Angeles. They are discovered by Jerry Heller. Heller gets them to the next step of music stardom. The plot thickens where it's in the movie. It is said that the rest of the band didn't get, especially Ice Cube, who wrote half of it, really didn't get the royalties that they should have for the album, and it's portrayed as if Jerry's the one screwing everybody, and Eazy's just kind of going along for the ride because he's not the one getting screwed, which leads to Ice Cube eventually leaving the band and kind of going off and doing his own thing. This causes a feud between NWA and Ice Cube. Later on, Suge Knight gets into the year of Dr. Dre. Rinse, repeat, you're being screwed by Jerry too. He leaves, they form Death Row, and then they find out that Jerry isn't paying the bills, and Ruthless Records is in the red. So there's this confrontation between Eazy and Jerry, where Jerry was like, it's just business. And on the one hand, they make Jerry into this conniving businessman who's just a total shyster. But then you're right. And then they want you to feel a degree of sympathy for him when he's trying to stop Eazy from killing Suge Knight.
Yeah, well, Suge and Cube, he wants to kill Cube, he wants to kill Suge Knight. Then when Dre left, he actually tried to kill Dre, which also got skipped over. And I understand, I'm not an asshole. I don't think every movie should be a documentary. I'm not a complete prick about this sort of stuff. I understand, nobody died.
It's hard to compact a 20-year career into a 2-hour. It's hard to compact a 20-year career into a 2-hour movie, especially.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
With all the stuff that went on with all of these people.
Well, that's the funny thing, though, Mark. It is hard to compact all that time, but they fucking tried. By the end of it, when they just went through all that remedial history telling, and it seemed like X-Men fan service, where they show Remy LeBeau's name on a folder. Towards the end of the movie, I was like, who is this for? I love all these people, but I don't care. That Dr. Dre came out and Snoop laid down nothing but a G thing, the first verse. I was bored through all that stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what my one major complaint about the movie is, because I thought the performances were stellar. I know, and I do want to talk a little bit about that. O'Shea Jackson Jr., I thought, hit it out of the park with Ice Cube. The guy that played Eazy-E was amazing. Like I said, the one. And I swear to God, the guy that played Dr. Dre.
The guy who played Dr. Dre should never be in a movie again.
Well, he looked just like Dr. Dre.
That's the big thing you could say. He looked like Dr. Dre. He was terrible as an actor.
Well, that last line, what are you gonna call your record company? Aftermath, and it was just stop, just stop. So the conversation was more get the fuck out of here before I shoot you. Not what are you gonna call your company?
Well, there's another thing. Did anybody ever get the best of Suge Knight in a one-on-9 situation? All right. I don't. Again, we're gonna get into the inaccuracies real quick. Who came out of this movie looking tougher, Dr. Dre or Ice Cube? Because the two of them were racing to the finish to come off as the bigger badass, and I didn't understand why.
Yeah, I was. This is definitely a rehabilitation picture for Dr. Dre. I can see an original first draft where they had to cut 20 pages of him beating the shit out of women and him saying, no, I'm gonna put my name on this thing. I look like the poor victim here, and a musical genius. But real quick, my one complaint about this movie overall, because I don't care about inaccuracies. I mean, as long as they're not,
No.
And then they met Elvis. I mean, as long as it's not something stupid like that.
Exactly. It's a movie. It doesn't matter how
my problem
whatever.
is,
I'm with you.
There's no third act. It just Eazy-E dies. I mean, if you'll remember, and maybe you know more details about this than I do, NWA actually did have a reunion and a tour and I think an album. and where Snoop
Chin
Dogg
Checker?
took over for Eazy-E.
Well, that was when they got on Farm Club. Do you remember Farm Club, the website?
No, I have no idea what that is.
Farm Club was a website that had a TV show, and they put up a lot of money to get NWA to reunite and make a couple tracks. And they did, and that's where they got Chin Checker and, like, this other song. Snoop was in the group, and stupid Eminem did a couple songs, and it made probably about $400 total.
Okay. But I'm sitting here, from a movie standpoint, they're building, they're all getting back together again, and, they're making amends and everything, and Eazy-E is dying of AIDS, and then he dies, and the movie ends. Like, there's nothing else after Eazy-E dies. There's a montage of original footage, and then credits. And I'm like, what the fuck? It was almost like they ran out of film. Like, we're out of film stock, fuck it, let's end the movie.
And
I'm like, what?
Eazy and Dre died when Eazy was on bad terms. They talked about afterwards. They revisionist history about how, Dre says that he talked to Eazy on the phone before the end, like while he was in the hospital, and they agreed to like make things better and stuff. But that never happened. And I don't mean to be like, oh, what the fuck, but for Eazy's wife to sit there, and by the way, she ran out on him after he got AIDS. They didn't really show that either, but whatever.
Well, no, she ran out of the hospital, but that was good.
Well, yeah, but that was it. She never saw Eazy again.
Okay.
But whatever. That's not again, that's not the point of the movie. It's just I just want to point out who's producing it. And right. I really liked the movie. I liked it a lot, but the paintbrushing of these guys into just being a couple misunderstood, good guys, hearts of gold, always trying to do the right thing for their friends around them. Could have been MMA stars had they chose to been. Also gun-toting, don't fuck with me guys. Like it was by the end of the movie, I was just like, why not just like how long until Dr. Dre can like stop time and Ice Cube just like transcends through buildings and shit like that, and just give them full-blown extra powers.
There's a scene of Dr. Dre curing AIDS and handing out the cure in Africa. Ice Cube collects the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
And Outta Compton, the whitewashing of NWA.
I don't know. But all right, how about the fact that there's nothing likable about Dr. Dre in this movie? He continuously makes wrong decisions. He's wrong. He completely fucking turns his back on the guy who actually had things right, and things just completely kept working out for him when he was doing the wrong things. Like he walked out on his wife and child. He turned his back on his mom. The whole movie is him being like one of the worst role models ever, and that's including him not beating up his girlfriend at the time on camera, and that lady who interviewed him, the radio lady. It's like, and then he's still a cunt, and they still have things just what the fuck, they work out for him.
Right. Well, he's made it look like an absolute genius in this movie, and like I said, he comes off as a genius and a victim. It's like poor Dr. Dre. He had all this talent, but Eazy-E was screwing him, and then Suge Knight was bullying him, and and finally, like it's like his personal story is all this tragedy happens to him, and finally he goes off on his own, become the biggest star in the music industry. Like, hey, wait a minute, that's not what happened.
Yeah, I just look. I like a lot about this movie. I just think, I think a lot of it. I mean, the police brutality scenes were like borderline and like inflammatory. Like it's almost like they wanted people to like storm out of the movie theater at some points, and like let's go make things right.
Those things. I like those scenes.
I like the scenes too, but I just didn't. I didn't understand.
Just in my life, I have seen police do some pretty rotten things, both personally and. Yeah. So, I thought the movie. I didn't get the sense that they were trying to incite a riot. I think they showed the police in the best light possible, showing them doing terrible things. because God knows that could have been worse. I mean, they didn't go like the bad lieutenant route. There's no cop walking up to Ice Cube going, "Hey, you, pull out your dick, Dr. Dre, open your mouth, suck it."
No, but I mean the scene where Heller stood up for them and stuff, and then was later a bad guy, or the scene when Heller, was like, yeah, you know what, that is the way to handle this, and then later was the bad guy, or when Heller I'm going back to the Heller being a good guy thing. When Heller told Easy to slow down when Easy was talking about pussy.
Right.
And it's just like, oh, okay, I get it. The white guy is the good. It's like I use the term "you," referring only to Jews. Mark, you people got your hands on this movie and did lay some underlying things like, oh, maybe the Jews aren't so bad.
I think the opt here was to not completely portray Jerry Heller as as Satan.
He was just overwhelmed, and it's like he said, this is a standard. It was probably worse than whatever Dre gave Eminem.
Oh, what's funny is my wife and I were talking about this, like, they're complaining about their contracts. The Beatles didn't own their music for decades. You want to talk about signing a bad contract,
Publishing rights.
And then and then when their music does come, is able, fucking Michael Jackson buys it.
Yeah.
Poor Paul McCartney. So.
Yeah, and then we got no more Ebony and Ivory.
No, we did not. So, I mean, I think the movie sort of washes over that too. Like, these poor schmucks, how they were taken advantage by this old Jew. It's like, well, and they probably wouldn't have been as famous either. Let's not, let's not look past that.
No, I give the Jews a lot of credit for getting their hands on the script and fixing it to make them, to give like a good light on them. It just Heller got overwhelmed, when really Heller and Easy conspired to to basically run a label of poor black people, pulled out of poor black communities and exploit them and make a ton of money off of them, because Easy was a fucking drug dealer and understood how to get his cut, at the very basic.
O'Shea Jackson, what did you, looks just like his dad, doesn't he?
Incredibly. And he was great the entire movie. He had, it's like, he had the mannerisms down and stuff like, who cares about that stuff really? As long as he goes out there and is a good character, that's all I really cared about, but he really fucking looked like his dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he sounded like his dad. I'm wondering if any of these guys go on to do, they're obviously selected for their look or for their sound like the original guys. But I'll be curious to see if O'Shea or the guy who plays Eazy-E or Dre, if they go on to do anything else of note, or is it basically you're famous because you look like somebody in NWA and that's the end of your acting career?
Well, I don't know. Joaquin Phoenix was fine after the Cash movie. I think he was obviously more established and shit like that, but I don't know, which black guy besides, and I'm just kind of condemning Hollywood. I'm not, picking on a race or anything crazy like that, but who really gets out of these sorts of things? There isn't really room for a black movie star anymore, and that's just another complete criticism on culture and stuff like that. But Michael B. Jordan's going to give it a shot, but already people are already kind of hating him, or is that just kind of what I'm getting from our Facebook group? But I don't think, I want, yeah, but dude, I want one of these guys to make it. Ice Cube's son should fucking he should be an Avenger. There's no reason for him not to be. Other than there's not an Avenger that looks like him, I guess. But I think there's a lot of room for these guys to do well. I've always loved the guy who played Ray Voodoo Tatum, who played MC Ren. By the way, MC Ren's contributions to NWA is just completely overshadowed. He had a verse in "Fuck the Police," and they acted like he was brought in to replace Cube afterwards, and they failed. But they had Appetite for Destruction. They had 100 Miles and Running. They had fucking like Put It in Her Mouth or whatever the fuck that other song. Like they had songs after Cube left. They weren't ever gonna hit. And they didn't have the Appetite for Destruction, impact like Guns N' Roses had. Like oh my God, there's nothing like this, like the original Straight Outta Compton album did. But they did well.
The original Straight Outta Compton album, I was telling my wife this. I said, they're also acting as if this was the only gangster rap album out there. It wasn't. Ice-T was doing this too. Ice-T had like 2 or 3 albums out by the time.
Yeah, the Ghetto Boys, But
Too Short had stuff out there. They, at least in the movie, they gave credit to the TOC, who also had stuff out there.
Public Enemy had about 4 albums at that point. But I just think, they did. You can't deny the impact that Straight Outta Compton had.
I'm not denying the impact. I'm saying that to act as if they were the only ones, that's just inaccurate. But the other side of that is, I think you only have an opportunity to make a cultural splash. I think once, and then there was all this stuff that sort of followed them. And then the next big change in rap is actually brought in by Dre. Dre's, with the Chronic, rap had a significant sea change. And then it would change again as the years went by. You have this the influx of Southern rappers, with Outkast, Master P, and all that. Did NWA, could they, if they had all stayed together, if Ice Cube had stayed in the band, would they have put out another album as good as Straight Outta Compton? Who knows?
No.
But I think as far as changing the culture, you're only going to do that once. You're not, unless you completely agree and hate yourself.
Which I don't think they were capable of. But look, they like this group, this time, this impact, it deserved a movie. And this was a good movie. I just think, there's some problems with it, and I'm not just talking about historical inaccuracies. I think you heard the story about the Queen movie that Sacha Baron Cohen was trying to get out, right?
No, tell me about it.
It's the drug-fueled gay sex side of Freddie Mercury that that you can't find anybody really talking about. You know what I mean? And like the crazy side of Queen and shit but Freddie Mercury's family is like, no, we don't want this movie to be made. And I don't have, you don't want the movie to be made, that's fine, but I don't think the world needs another biopic of here's the other thing with this movie. This movie should have ended in Detroit. At the peak of...
Yep, did we lose you there, Jed? Yeah, we did. Hopefully Jed calls back in just a moment. He's talking about the scene in Detroit. They have received a letter from the FBI saying, don't play fuck the police. They are warned several times by the Detroit police, don't play fuck the police. And what do? They play fuck the police. And I'm going to assume that Jed's point there is that that was sort of like the height of NWA at that point. And things sort of start to go downhill from there. Which brings me back to the point that I said earlier. This is more than just NWA. It was about the guys individually, and so you start to trace the very abbreviated history of Ice Cube. You get to see him writing Friday, that sort of thing. You see his creation of his solo career, America's Most Wanted, and The Predator, and Lethal Injection, and all of that. You see the rise of Dre and the rise and fall of Death Row Records, and where Eazy and Ruthless Records ended up. So the movie sort of splits off into 3 different tracks there. And then it sort of coalesces back at the end when Eazy finds out he has AIDS. Everyone's making amends. And then I said the movie just ends. Instead of there being sort of a triumphant return of NWA featuring Snoop Dogg, which is where I thought they were going and would have made sense. It just drops off the end of the earth. Here's Jed to sort of explain why he thinks the movie should have ended in Detroit.
Well, I mean, it's kind of where these type of movies end. Like, it ends on the... Well, I mean, that was the climax of the movie, wasn't it?
I was just saying, I think it was the high point of NWA because things start to go south after that. I mean, as far as the timeline of the movie, shortly after that scene, the tour ends and Ice Cube basically goes to Heller and says, "Am I going to get my money?" And Heller says, "No," essentially. And he says, "Well, then, deuces."
Yeah, but see, this is my other problem with the movie. The movie was not the movie in the previews. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's actually very little time spent anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the
all...
hour of the movie. And the second hour, I was saying this before, the second hour is the three separate stories of Ice Cube's solo career, Dr. Dre in Death Row, and, sort of the rise and fall of Eazy-E and Ruthless Records.
Yeah, which is just... it just seemed like fan servicing and like historical retelling of uninteresting times.
I mentioned the wink and a nod to him writing Friday.
Well, it's the same director,
Yes, it was.
There were two nods to Friday.
Yes, which everyone now. I
they
was trying to explain it to my wife. The original By Felicia is in Friday, and they made just to kind of, speaking of fan service, just to give kind of a wink and a nod to fans of Friday, they threw that in the movie. I'm going to assume there wasn't a woman named Felicia giving Eazy-E a blowjob who they threw out of the room and then said, "Bye, Felicia." I seriously doubt that's what really happened.
Well, I also doubt that the guns were pulled out and that whole scene even happened at all. But I can certainly, I certainly believe the misogynistic look towards women in the movie, like of them just being girls who blow you in a hotel.
Oh, that goes back to what I was saying before. I said women in this movie serve two purposes: nagging and blowing. That's it. That's all they're good for.
Yeah.
Depending on who the woman is.
It is funny that the movie gave 3 different times where the rappers met D1, quote unquote. You know what I mean? Like, no, man, that's my wife. And it was just all 3 times. I'm like, okay, guys. It seemed like the end of Private Parts when it was just all about Howard's wife. You're just like, okay, guys, I get it. You're all married and you have to give credit to your wife as, the mother of your children and stuff. But is this interesting?
Yeah. I didn't necessarily get bored at any point in the movie. I did wonder where they were going with some of the Death Row stuff, which I have to give credit to the actor who played Suge Knight. I thought he did an outstanding job of playing this menacing dirtbag.
That's the other thing. Dre never stood up for Suge Knight. Dre left, Death Row without telling Suge Knight, and then it was handled in courts.
Right. So again, we are trying to turn Dr. Dre into some sort of hero that he really wasn't. Which whatever, it's their movie.
Yeah.
If this is what people get,
it's fine.
I was gonna say what's the phrase about if the myth is better than the facts, repeat the myth.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. Like I said, overall, it was a little over 2 hours. The movie made bank. It was a $29 million budget. Yeah, $75 million so far, according to Wikipedia. So the movie's a smash. What do they do from here? Who knows? I know Ice Cube's got some stuff in the works. Dr. Dre continues with his company, and Eazy-E is still dead. Tyrone Woodley was in this. You don't really follow MMA, but he showed up as T-Bone, and I was very excited. I was like, oh, that's Tyrone Woodley, who isn't in the original cast. They put him down later on in the cast, among a bunch of other people. All right, Any last any other thoughts about the movie? Obviously you liked it, despite all of that. You know, you were entertained by it.
Yeah.
Anything else worth mentioning?
You know, just it's almost 2.5 hours, which is fucking shocking. And everything you see in the preview is in the first 25 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be a little bit more. This is the other, and I'm just thinking about this now. Other than the fact that it just sort of ends out of nowhere, which really bugged me, and the stuff with Easy dying of age was a bit maudlin. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more Compton in 1986. You get that little taste of it at the very beginning with Eazy-E, but that's only through his perspective. You know,
that's the funny thing. That's what NWA sold towards white America, and that's what we all bought, and they gave us none of it.
Right. I mean, you see, the introduction of Ice Cube is someone's making gang signs and whatnot at a bunch of gang members who then pull the bus over and threaten the kid, and then as Ice Cube says in the movie, then gave a speech.
It's just funny because they were more of like the voice of reason than Dre's mom or any woman in the whole movie.
So you have so Ice Cube's sort of dual introduction is the bus incident, and then him getting harassed by the police, and then yelling at his mother and all that. Dr. Dre being nagged by his mom, and then the rest of it is just a lot of it was about the music. But if you're going to tell me a story about how these guys became cultural icons because they dug their hands deep in the dirt of their culture and they threw it at the wall for all the world to see. Show me more of the culture.
Yeah.
You know, instead of
or how about
spending, instead of spending so much time, talking about the sort of solo career of Ice Cube, which I did not care about. I know that he had #1 records. I know that he went on to become a sort of cultural phenomenon in his own right. So did Dre. We got that part. What we don't know is why where did all this anger come from? Because you get the sense that Ice Cube's very angry at white people, but you have no idea why. And to tell me, oh well, because of Jerry. That's one guy. If he's angry at all white people because of one guy, then he's a bigger asshole than we all thought. So, give me more of it.
Yeah,
and then
it's just not the movie that was made.
They whitewashed his whole interaction with the Nation of Islam. And they have a really great scene there where he tells the reporter to eat dick, which is fine and everything, and it was funny. But I'm like, are we going to delve into this at all? They were there. They were a part of his life.
They just say, he's just looking over his shoulder. And it's just like, well, that was kind of ominous. And then they don't explain it at all.
No. They I would have if you're going to tell me that Ice Cube is this crazy, angry racist, I would have liked to have known why. Completely off topic. I was also wondering if they were ever going to get into the beef he had with Cypress Hill, but I suppose that's another movie.
No, or Mac. Yeah, that's not happening. Or when Dr. Dre slapped Left Eye or T-Boz around for dating Mac 10, and none of that happened. It's just like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
And instead of making Ren sort of a bit player in this movie, maybe talk a little bit where he came from, because if you were to just go by the logic of the movie, he was apparently Eazy-E's sidekick. It just sort of walks. Yeah, they just should have put up a sign that says, "And here's fucking MC Ren." It appears out of the ether.
He had a big hit. The Villain You Love to Hate after NWA, but not this movie.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, he didn't have anyone producing the movie for him, so he gets relegated to nothing. All right. Overall, despite some of our nitpicking and criticisms, it's an awesome movie. It was a great tale to tell. The music in it, I think, is as relevant today as it was when it was written in 1986, especially when you see whatever side you took in the Mike Brown shooting, again, an unarmed black kid gets shot by a white cop. We're still dealing with this stuff, and I'm not about to get into right or wrong on that. It happened, and Fuck the Police was about that sort of thing. Drugs still exist. There's still still crime. There's still plenty of ghettos out there. So you're still talking about culturally relevant music. I would definitely recommend people go see the movie. Even if you're not familiar with NWA, you'll probably enjoy it more than the two of us did, because you will not have any idea what the accuracies are. But it's they've earned their spot in the American lexicon, and the movie, I think, does right enough by the group. Any last words there, Jed? All right.
Fuck the Police.
Fuck the Police. I would have loved to have played that tonight. So you can, if you've enjoyed Jed tonight, and I certainly appreciate Jed coming on to talk about this movie with me, you can hear him almost kind of maybe every week on the Casual Heroes. He also does a column called Trailer Nihilism, where he absolutely tears apart your favorite new trailers. That's over on thecasualheroes.com, as well as the WrestleCast. So go ahead and check that out. Tomorrow night, Metal Hammer of Doom returns. We're going to be reviewing the new Lamb of God. It's a little late because I went to go see Fantastic Four, so they ended up doing part 2 of their Jesse and Robert did of whatever the hell they did. I can't even pronounce it. Something about trees. So we're going to do the new Lamb of God, and then a week from Thursday, we'll finish up the Jack Ryan Long Road to Ruin, and then we should be back on track again, hopefully. Crossing fingers. I don't think I have too many Thursdays off in the near future. Next Monday, you can hear me on Source Material. It was recorded this past week, but it'll be posted in the archives this coming Monday. Myself and one of the guys from Screaming Boy, Ronnie, we talked about the Secret Wars issue number 5, plus some of the Secret Wars Battleground stuff that I've been reading, like A-Force, Planet Hulk, Future Imperfect, Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, and that's it. And Howard the Duck. You can also check me out on the latest episode for Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. We talked about the bad guys of the Fantastic Four. We mostly stuck with the big ones, Dr. Doom, once again, Galactus, Annihilus, and the Mole Man. Talked about the Mole Man. And I think that's it. So for all of us here at the Radulich Broadcasting Network, for Jed over at the Casual Heroes, be well, be safe, and behave.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie. Yeah, we're gonna be a movie.
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Hey, a movie. We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody.
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in. We're gonna